Okay, Blue-Black Delver, match 1. We are on the draw. We have a Ponder and a Brainstorm to help find us some black mana. Having 2 Delve spells in the opening hand is always a little bit awkward, but this hand is fine. Alright, another Brainstorm. Pass the turn. You generally want to Brainstorm before Ponder because you can put back 2 cards that you don't want and then shuffle away the other 2. We're not going to get to do that if we Brainstorm on our opponent's end step here, because we'll have to draw at least one of the cards, but I'm going to do so anyway. So we're going to have to redraw one of these cards anyway. I'm going to start by getting rid of a Gurmag, or getting rid of a Sultai Scavenger, and then we'll redraw one of these other cards. I could also have kept the Thought Scour in hand and Thought Scoured myself on my upkeep, but it's not particularly what I wanted to do. Now I get to hold open Counterspell and also Brainstorm into Thought Scour. If our opponent plays Phyrexian Rager or Chittering Rats, we are going to counterspell it. Opponent's going for a main phase Quambage Witch's activation to trade a damage for a damage, and is playing another Witch. I'm going to let that resolve because it doesn't really matter. Alright, Brainstorm. Now, which of these cards do I want the least? I'm pretty sure I don't want this Scavenger or this Dismal Backwater. I have enough lands for now. So I'll mill them off the top of my library. Agony Warp. It's not too bad. So I'm going to play Evolving Wilds this turn. I get to hold open Brainstorm plus Ponder. Well, not Ponder because Ponder is not instant speed, but I get to hold open either Counterspell or Brainstorm. And if I get to play Brainstorm, I get the cool trick of being able to shuffle away the top 2 cards with Evolving Wilds. Alright, looks like I'm going to get to do that. So what 2 cards do I want the least here? Keeping in mind that I can't fetch an Evolving Wilds. I can't use Evolving Wilds to fetch a Swamp if I keep the Swamp in my hand. Delver of Secrets is not long for this world right now, unless I get rid of both of those Quambage Witches, so I definitely don't want to draw that. Additionally, I think I'm going to get rid of this Swamp just so I can go find it with the Evolving Wilds. It'll be a little bit awkward being stuck on 3 mana here, but because I can cast Gurmag Angler for 1, it's okay. Whenever I delve cards away, the only cards that I care about leaving in my graveyard are creature cards. And that's because I have a copy of Mortuary Mire in my deck. There's no way I can recur my instants or sorceries or lands in any way. So I get rid of those first. I have a counterspell here. I get to protect this Gurmag Angler from whatever our opponent's first removal for it is. Phyrexian Rager. Alright, our opponent has already played their land this turn, so they can't even go any sort of 1-mana removal spell, of which there aren't any commonly played ones that can get rid of Gurmag Angler. Alright, and our opponent has to pass the turn. We'll see if they chump block here. They decide to take 5. And I'm going to start off with a Ponder. It's kind of awkward playing the Stormbound Geist into Quambage, which is double activation. Although that does make it a 3/3, which is kind of cool. So I don't want these cards, but I definitely don't want Delver. I don't want Island. I could take the Evolving Wilds and then crack it and not have to draw the other 2 cards, and then hold open a 2-mana spell. That's a pretty good idea, I think. Our opponent chooses not to use Quambage Witches to target us on our end step. They could have traded 2 damage for 2 damage there, indicating that they either forgot or they don't think that they're winning the damage race right now, meaning that they probably don't have a removal spell for Angler in hand. Our opponent's going to unearth their Phyrexian Rager. Alright, that's fine. And they have a Chainer's Edict, which is pretty unfortunate for us, obviously, because we do not have a counterspell up again. But our graveyard's getting full, and we'll be able to play another Angler next turn. Alright, and now it's time to decide what I'm going to do with these removal spells. The Stormbound Geist doesn't really do a lot right now. It does pressure our opponent's life total, so I could play potentially a Geist and an Angler next turn. Yeah, I think that's probably the best plan. So if I wanted to play the Geist, I would want one of these Quambage Witches off the table. So I think I will take this opportunity to Agony Warp. So I'll give one of them -3, -0, and the other one I'll give -0, -3 and kill it. So I don't take any damage from attacks this turn. Delver of Secrets. Alright. If I had a counter spell, I would probably just play Angler plus hold up and counter spell, but since I don't, I'm going to play a Stormbound Geist. This also protects me from another edict effect, such as another Chainer's Edict or Geth's Verdict. And I'll pass. Best thing our opponent could do here is untap in maybe Oubliette or Gurmag Angler. Or they could untap and play a Grey Merchant, which would help them not die as quickly, but we'd still be ahead in the damage race, I believe. Chittering Rats. Okay. We have a pretty nice setup here, because if our opponent tries to triple block, then we have an Agony Warp, a Disfigure, and a Diabolic Edict, which can all make that go pretty poorly for our opponent. They could have a Disfigure up, which we should keep in mind. Alright, they decided chump block, which is fine with us. The next thing I'm going to do is get rid of this Quambage Witches, so that I can land a Delver of Secrets, and I'll pass the turn. Now the only thing that really wrecks us is like Swamp into Tendrils of Corruption on our Gurmag Angler, since that would get rid of the Angler and buy our opponent a lot of time. Okay, Grey Merchant. We are okay with that, since we're still attacking for quite a lot. Either 7 or 10 next turn, depending on if we flip this Delver. Island. We do not want to reveal an island. Alright, so I'm going to disfigure the Chittering Rats pre-combat. And the reason for that is if our opponent is planning to chump block with the rats on the Gurmag Angler, this prevents them from doing that. Now if they want to chump block, they have to do it with the 2/4. I could have had the same effect with this Diabolic Edict, but if our opponent plays another 3 or 4 toughness creature, such as a Witch or a Grey Merchant, then it will be better for us to have a Diabolic Edict in hand than a Disfigure. Once again, we're just hoping to dodge Tendrils of Corruption. Alright, our opponent has another Grey Merchant. So they're definitely delaying our beatdown plan, unfortunately. But we're still attacking for 7 a turn, which is quite a lot. See if we can make it 10. Island. That was unfortunate. Alright. Attack, attack. I have an option of Diabolic Edict pre-combat there, and then attacking with the Delver of Secrets as well. But I'm not going to do that. This island I'm going to keep in hand, so I can put it back on top of my library with Brainstorm if I want to. It is a little bit awkward if our opponent goes Chittering Rats here. Yeah, I probably should have played that island out. I wasn't thinking about Chittering Rats, I was thinking more about our own deck and the fact that we can keep extra lands in hand. Another Grey Merchant. Okay. That makes sense why they didn't block last turn, because they wanted to keep their devotion around. A Diabolic Edict before this enters the battlefield. I could also do it with the trigger on the stack. It doesn't really make a difference either way. Opponent gains another 4. If we can flip the Delver of Secrets this time, then they'll be forced to block the Gurmag Angler. Okay, that's another Gurmag Angler. We're not going to reveal that. Our opponent is also only 1 mana away from being able to flashback Chainer's Edict. Alright, and we're going to play this as well. This time we're going to go empty-handed because of the Chittering Rats that we forgot about last time. Okay, and a flashback Chainer's Edict will buy our opponent enough time. We could sacrifice the Delver, they can chump block 1 Angler. Oh no, it won't. That's exactly 7 damage. So they need to do something besides flashing back Chainer's Edict this turn. Alright, our opponent concedes they don't have anything in hand that can stop this, and we get to sideboard. So against mono black control, although they do have Unearth and Chainer's Edict, I don't think I'm going to end up wanting these Nihil Spell Bombs. I think there are better cards for us, but I'm going to keep them in mind just in case. Doomblade is obviously quite bad. We're going to sideboard out our one copy of that. Agony Warp matches up well against all their creatures, except for Gurmag Angler and Grey Merchant, so we'll bring in that. Exclude is also important in this matchup, because our opponent's creatures are very good. Stormaggeist doesn't do very much in terms of blocking, but it does a lot in terms of avoiding removal. As long as our opponent does not oubliette it, then they have to remove it twice, or face a lot of damage in the air. So I'm going to bring in those as well. The cards I'm going to take out are one Gush. I typically sideboard this card out. It doesn't do a whole lot. It can put lands back in your hand for Brainstorm to get rid of the lands. But besides that, it's just a card advantage spell, and there's typically better things in the sideboard than that. On the draw, the Deprives get a little bit worse, and although I like counter magic against them, I am bringing in two Excludes, which will kind of take the place of these two Deprive. And I'm going to take out one Sultai Scavenger in case our opponent brings in Graveyard Hate of their own, and I don't want to have too many Delve creatures. And I'll submit this. So this has lands and spells. We can ponder, take one card, or rather take two cards and then crack an Evolving Wilds the next turn. We could Brainstorm turn one. We have some options. Alright, our opponent did bring in Graveyard Hate, so it's probably a good idea that we took out one Delve spell. So I'm just going to play an Evolving Wilds and pass here, and the reason is this lets me hold open Deprive on my second turn and counter our opponent's 3-drop. And the 3-drops are often the most important for them to resolve. Chuttering Rats is pretty good. Phyrexian Rager gets them ahead of card. And, okay, so Delver of Secrets is looking pretty bad here. On turn 1 it's pretty good, but if our opponent has the Colombage Witches active, then obviously it'll just die to one activation. Our opponent attacks for 1 and passes the turn. Okay, I'm going to Brainstorm here. Alright, we found another Brainstorm, another Delver. We're going to have to draw one of these again, because we don't have anything else we can do at instant speed with besides Brainstorm again. Alright, we redraw one of those, do one more Brainstorm, try to find an untapped blue source. Alright, more Delvers. So we could try to get rid of this Colombage Witches by finding a black source, but we don't actually have a black source right now, or a way to get it. So because the Witches is going to be around a while, I'm going to get rid of both of these Delvers. A mental note ourselves, and that was the perfect draw. We found a tap land. While Relic of Progenitus is good against us, you can see that they can't really keep up with the amount of cards that we can put into our graveyard. So we will still be able to resolve some Delve spells, unless our opponent cracks the Relic here. Our shields are down this turn, but if our opponent somehow doesn't play any creatures, then we'll get to have Excludes up for days, which is going to be pretty good for us for countering our opponent's Ragers and Rats and eventually Grey Merchants. Alright, our opponent missed their land drop and cracked their Relic trying to find it, but they were not successful. I think I'm going to not play a Ponder here. I'd rather leave open Deprive plus Edict if that's what I choose to do. Even though what I think I'm going to end up doing is excluding something. Alright. Take this opportunity to Edict away the Witch, since I'm not doing anything else with my mana. Dismal Backwater. And this time I am going to Ponder. I still get to leave open Exclude. So I'm looking for creatures now. Stormbound Geist is good. Agony Warp is fine. So I think I actually am going to keep these cards. I would rather have found a Delve spell than my Stormbound Geist, but the Stormbound Geist is fine as well. Alright. And we're going to exclude this Rager, and we're just going to get miles and miles ahead of our opponent here, because they really have to resolve those quality 3-drops to get ahead. If they can resolve a duress next turn before they cast a creature, then that could be pretty good for them. So we get to play a Stormbound Geist. I'm not going to counter a removal spell for this because it only turns it into a 3/3. I will probably counter an Oubliette if our opponent has it. But otherwise, I'm trying to only cast Exclude. Alright, Disfigure. Like I said, I'm not going to counter that. This indicates that our opponent does not have Oubliette. Tendrils of Corruption. So I'm going to counter this because our opponent's tapped out and they can't do anything else this turn. And I'm going to pick up an island, I suppose. If our opponent had just Chainer's Edict there, I'd be a lot more hesitant to counter it because our opponent could then go land plus 3-drop while we didn't have Exclude available. Okay. If I play Ponder, I can still deprive and exclude, so I'm going to play Ponder. And I don't want all these lands, even though there is a removal spell. I'm looking for a creature. And Brainstorm is fine. So Duress is the only really good card our opponent can cast right now, since Deprive and Exclude take care of everything else. I am going to save our 3/3 by countering this. Leave up Exclude. Our opponent has Sign in Blood, so they get to resolve that. I'm going to Brainstorm. And I don't have any way to shuffle our library, so I'll just put these lands on top, redraw one of them, and keep on going. Counterspell is exactly what we want here. If we weren't going to find a Gurmag Angler or a Scavenger, we wanted a counterspell. Just going to ride this Stormbound Geist all the way to victory. Alright, so there's the duress that we did not want to see. Counterspell here would be kind of good, countering the duress, so that way we could exclude our opponent's 3-drop afterward. But if our opponent does have Tendrils of Corruption, then they'll get to resolve that. However, if they have Tendrils of Corruption, they'll just take the counterspell from our hand. So I think it's worth denying our opponent the information here. They would most likely take the counterspell or the exclude anyway. And now they don't get to know what kind of other spells we have in our hand. Tendrils of Corruption. Okay, I could Agony Warp my own creature to prevent them gaining 5 life, but I think that's a pretty bad idea. I'd rather save my removal. We drew the land that we knew we had on top. And our opponent plays a Grey Merchant onto an empty board. Normally we wouldn't care about that, but we have nothing else going on, and we really want to draw some creatures of our own. Evolving Wilds, Dismal Backwater. I guess I'll go with the Wilds, since it thins out my deck a little bit more. Find an island. Perfect, there's the Angler. Now the question is, since our opponent just passed the turn without playing a creature, they probably have removal in hand, so do I want to save this Angler until I have a counterspell? And I think the answer is yes, I'm going to wait. If our opponent has like one Oubliette, or even if they just have a land so they can flashback Chainer's Edict, I would really like to be able to stop that. Our opponent cycles away a Barrenmoor, and another Barrenmoor. And they have a Rager. I'm going to disfigure this just to empty my hand. Thought Scour. Okay, I could main deck Thought Scour myself, but it's kind of worse if our opponent draws exactly Relic of Progenitus. Oh, that's fine. If they crack a Relic, that means they don't get to use their Chainer's Edict, so I'll pop up my graveyard in a little bit and see what it is I'm milling exactly. I'll pop up both these graveyards. So our opponent has one Chainer's Edict, and we flipped over some of our counter spells, which is not great. Grey Merchant. Okay. We could kill this in response with 2 removal spells to stop them from gaining 2 life, but I don't think that's worth it. Alright, there's a Relic. See if our opponent cracks it and gets rid of their own Chainer's Edict. Okay, they do. That's actually pretty fine for us. because we can still crack this Evolving Wilds, untap, play an Angler, and still have counter magic available, I believe. Stormbound Geist. Okay. Well, now that we have two creatures, I think I'm just going to end up playing both of them. I could leave open Disfigure, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to tap out and leave a card in my graveyard. It would have been nice to wait on a counterspell, but now that the Chainer's Edict is gone and we have another creature to protect against Edict effects with, then I think it was correct to deploy them. Alright, there's the Oubliette that we were worried about. Let's see whether it takes out the Undying creature or the big creature. Okay, it takes out the Angler. And our opponent follows up with a Phyrexian Rager. And a Swamp, so they're down to one card in hand. Alright, so we attack here because we cannot block. We're going to play out this Evolving Wilds to thin our deck some more. Oops, I accidentally passed. See, that was pretty bad. Now if our opponent has a Chittering Rats, then we're going to not be able to go down to 0 cards in hand like we would have been able to otherwise. Alright, they have Pestilence. So here we're going to have to kill the Grey Merchant most likely, because our opponent's going to attack, and then they're going to maybe try to activate Pestilence for 2 and then activate it for 3 on our turn. And at that point we'll get rid of the Grey Merchant, so the Pestilence goes away. We could get rid of their creatures now, but I want them to do the Pestilence plan so that we can get rid of Pestilence. If I just get rid of their creatures with my 2 spells, then they'll activate Pestilence for 2, and then they can do it on my turn, and it's basically the same, except I'm wasting spells. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I can't really afford to be drained for 9. So maybe I should just get rid of these spells in my hand. I think I have to, because I have to get rid of at least one. And the reason is that now the Pestilence is lethal on our opponent's turn. I could take 2 spells together to get rid of a Grey Merchant, but I think we're dead either way. So now we have to gain life or get the Pestilence off the table somehow. Yeah, I'm not sure how we can do this. Preordain just in case there's a way. Angler Scavenger. No matter what we do, we're just dead to the Pestilence activations. Well, we'll pass the turn and see if our opponent actually does it. But it looks like we're going to lose this game too. I was not thinking about Pestilence when I decided not to Agony Warp pre-damage. And our opponent gets to attack for lethal. We can't block, with Pestilence activations at the ready. On to game 3. So Oubliette and Pestilence raise the question of if we want annuls. And I think the answer is no. Our regular counter magic can take care of those just as easily, and they don't have that many of those cards in their deck, so we don't want to have annuls and then not be able to use them. I'm going to bring back in a Deprive over a Diabolic Edict, since we're going to be on the play. Alright, game 3. Our hand is quite bad, but it has the potential to be quite good if we can find a black source, so I'm going to keep. I get to play Delver of Secrets turn 1, and then hopefully blind flip it. If I don't flip it, then I can ponder on my next turn to try to find lands and also find a way to get Delver of Secrets flipped. See if our opponent left in Disfigures. Okay, turn 1 Relic. Island. I do not wish to reveal this card, but it is a counterspell, which is pretty good for me. It does mean I get to cast counterspell, that is. I'd rather do that than Ponder. Ponder does help me flip Delver, but I'm scared of what our opponent could do here. I would counter a Sight in Blood, I would counter a removal spell for this Delver. I would counter a Witch, probably. Alright, there's the Witch, so we're going to get rid of that. If our Delver does not flip, then we would be forced to try to get rid of it with Agony Warp to prevent it from killing our Delver of Secrets. What did we reveal? Dismal Backwater. Okay. Lead off with a Ponder. Brainstorm, Deprive, Disfigure. That's certainly an interesting combination. I think that's probably good enough. I'm going to lead them like Disfigure, Deprive, Brainstorm, and not Shuffle. So we have Deprive on top of our library, and we can Brainstorm at the end of the turn if we'd like. Alright, so there goes the Delver. It's not going to flip. Relic takes out a card. Okay, we have no way to shuffle, so we'll just put some cards back on top and take this opportunity to do nothing. I was going to say play an Angler, but we're one card short. Or two cards short, rather. The Relic is slowing us down here for sure. If there was no Relic, we'd have two more cards in our graveyard. Sign in Blood. Do we care about depriving that? Our opponent missed our last land drop, so I think we do. This also lets us put another card into our yard for the Angler. And we lose a card from our yard for the Angler. And hopefully we get to kill something this turn so we can at least stay even on cards in our graveyard in this battle against the Relic of Progenitus. So the question is what we want to get rid of. Do we want to use a Disfigure or an Agony Warp on this? Agony Warp costs us more mana, so I think I'm going to do that. Okay. Brainstorm. So we definitely don't want to see this Angler again anytime soon. And probably not this Disfigure. So I'm going to play Delver. I'm going to play land, and I'm going to Ponder to set up the top of our library for Delver. So I could go Gurmag, Angler, Island, Disfigure, and, well, actually, well, I wasn't going to do it anyway, but the point is I could have put the Disfigure second from the top, not first from the top, so I could flip this Delver, but then it requires that I draw those cards, and I do not want to draw those cards, because this one Gurmag Angler alone is going to be hard enough to cast, and I don't want to draw another land and another Gurmag Angler. So I'm going to shuffle and hope to blind flip. If our Delver of Secret just gets removed by anything here, then setting up our top of our library to flip Delver, and then not even getting to do that would be pretty bad for us. There is an argument for disfiguring the Phyrexian Rager on the stack because of Undying Evil, but not many mono black decks play that card, and I haven't seen it from our opponent either. So we are finally going to get to play an Angler next turn, unless our opponent cracks the Relic, which they did do, unfortunately for us. We'll disfigure this and see what we reveal. Brainstorm, perfect. We do wish to reveal this card. We're going to do it main phase. Hope to find a Thought Scour. No, but we did find... Okay, so I think I'm going to do it like this. Island, Angler, Land, Delver. And I know this Delver is not going to flip, but I just want to play as many creatures as possible. This is protection against Edict effects, so if our opponent has any sort of Changer's Edict, then I can just get rid of this Delver that I know is not flipping. Additionally, if our opponent doesn't mess with our graveyard, we can cast the Angler next turn. The only unfortunate part is that we do have an island on top of the deck underneath that. Alright, our opponent casts a Pestilence, which is actually very good against us here. The question is whether we play our Angler. Because if our opponent hits a land drop, then they get to kill everything. Except for the Stormbound Geist, which will come back. I think since our opponent is going to be forced to spend 2 and then spend 3 again, if they don't want to die to the Stormbound Geist, I don't think it's correct to play out the Angler. It's better, of course, if our opponent does not find the land, because then the Angler will survive the activation of Pestilence. Alright. Our opponent activates it once here, and again, and they should not be doing this unless they have a removal spell. Because now that means the Stormbound Geist is going to be able to attack on our turn. If they did this on our turn, then Stormbound Geist would come back from Undying and have Summoning Sickness and not be able to attack. But now they're forced to remove it or take 3 damage. Alright, and they go down to 2. And now it's safe to play out the Angler, because our opponent cannot activate Pestilence anymore. Well, they can activate it one more time, but not anymore after that, until after they gain some life. And see if our opponent can get out of this situation. We've been very lucky they couldn't find their land drop, so they couldn't start chaining Gray Merchants together. But they found a land here. If they play a Merchant, they go up to 6, then they go down to 3 from the Flyer, and they have to chump block. Yeah, our opponent's not in a great spot, even if they have Gray Merchants in hand. If they can just loop them one after the other for days, then we're going to be in trouble, but if we just draw counter magic, then that would be pretty good for us. Okay, there's the first Gray Merchant. So our opponent's forced to chump block with it. If we draw a removal spell for that, then we're good to go. Disfigure, that's not actually going to work. Opponent's going to fall to 3. So they now are allowed to activate Pestilence. Well, not even 3 times. No, they still can't activate Pestilence to get rid of our creatures. Let's see what they have to follow up. Another Gray Merchant. Okay, so as we said, they're just looping Gray Merchants back and forth, which is definitely good for them. Alright, what can I find? Counterspell Deprive. Now what I really want to find is another removal spell to combine with this Disfigure, but I actually only have one black source anyway. So that's not really that good for me. So I'm going to keep this counter magic. I'm going to attack. And this should be enough to put away the game. Our opponent's going to fall to 4, so they can't deal with the Gurmag Angler with Pestilence alone. And we have counter spells for their other ways of dealing with the Angler. Oubliette. Alright, I'm definitely going to counter that, because it can get rid of our 5/5. Now our opponent has to have removal for the Angler to be able to survive this turn. Alright, and our opponent has conceded. So the power of counter magic got us there, and our opponent wants to show us our hand. Triple Chittering Rats, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, Gurmag Angler, Sign in Blood. Wow, that's pretty impressive. If our opponent had one more card in the graveyard, they could have cast Gurmag Angler, and we wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. We could have disfigured their Angler and kept ours alive, but it would have been something at least. So, due to our opponent not drawing lands and us drawing counter magic at just the right time, we were able to take down match 1, and we were on to match 2.